name's Hydo, and welcome to the Pantheon, where we're going to be having a look at one of 2021 Commander deck's new commanders. And it's quite an interesting mono-red card. Bit of card advantage built into it. Lovely. Without further ado, let's have a look at Lalia, the Blade Reforged, who weighs in at 3 mana. So it hits the field nice and early. Pretty sweet. It's a Spirit Warrior and it has haste, so it can get to attacking straight away. Whenever Lalia the Blade Reforged attacks, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. So it's play, so any lands that are exiled, you can put those into play for your special action for the turn. However, on turn 3, the likelihood of us being able to play anything is pretty slim. But whenever you exile one or more cards from your library and or your graveyard, put a 1/1 counter on Lalia. Really, really cool. And she's a 2/2, so as soon as she swings in, she's going to exile a card and become a 3/3. All those abilities work really well together, and this isn't the best commander, but there's some really interesting cards to put in. So let's move on to number 5. Underworld Breach. 2 mana enchantment. Each non-land card in your graveyard has escape. The escape cost is equal to that card's mana cost, plus exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. So you're going to be using your graveyard to exile, so it'll trigger our commander. At the beginning of your end step, sacrifice Underworld Breach. Really, really cool. And let me get this out of the way first. I straight away thought that, oh, flashback, you know, when you cast it from flashback, it exiles itself. But it doesn't. It goes from the graveyard onto the stack and then goes to exile. So originally this was Past in Flames, which, you know, gives everything flashback, but flashback doesn't work how you think it would. To go along with this, as an example here, Ignite the Future is a card that is worth putting in this deck though. 4 mana, exile the top 3 cards of your library, so it'll trigger our commander there through the exile of the top 3 cards. Until end of your next turn, you may play those cards. If a spell was cast from a graveyard, you may play cards this way without paying their mana cost, so we can cheat mana there for 8 mana flashback. But the actual casting of flashback doesn't trigger our commander and give her a 1/1 counter. However, exiling things as part of the cost, so through escape, does. So Escape Velocity is a 1 mana enchantment. Enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and has haste, so, you know, buffs our commander slightly, and if we have another big creature, we can give it haste straight away. Escape is pay 2, exile 2 other cards from your graveyard. So the exile of those 2 cards would give us 1 counter, because it doesn't count each card that leaves. It's just whenever a card or group of cards would leave. So we want effects that, you know, do it gradually. Grim Lavamancer is a 1 mana 1/1 human wizard with pay red and tap. Exile 2 cards from your graveyard. Grim Lavamancer deals 2 damage to any target. Nice bit of reach, can kill a creature, a planeswalker, or our opponents, you know, if they're at 2 life. Which brings me on to number 4. Relic of Progenitus. This is the sort of effect we want. So, 1 mana for an artifact. Target player exiles a card from his or her graveyard. Or, pay 1, exile Relic of Progenitus, exile all cards from all graveyards, draw a card. So a nice little cantrip if we need to nuke the graveyard. But the reason we want these sort of effects is target player exiles a card from his or her graveyard. We're going to target ourselves with that and remove 1 card, which will trigger our commander, get a 1/1 counter, and then if we do it again next turn, another. Because it's individual, we get those counters each time. Scrabbling Claws is very similar to this. 1 mana for an artifact. Target player exiles a card from his or her graveyard. Pay 1, sacrifice Scrabbling Claws, exile target card from a graveyard, draw a card. So again, exactly the same sort of thing, and if we need to, we can sacrifice it, draw a card, exile 1 more. Pyxis of Pandemonium is a 1 mana artifact. Tap, each player exiles the top card of his or her library face down. Triggers our commander. And then 7, tap, sacrifice Pyxis of Pandemonium. Each player turns face up all cards he or she owns exiled with Pyxis of Pandemonium. Then puts all permanent cards among them onto the battlefield. This can cause absolute chaos. Maybe the 7 mana ability isn't what we're after here. But, you know, in desperate times, desperate measures. Chandra Torch of Defiance is a 4 mana 4 loyalty planeswalker. The main reason we want to use her, +1, exile the top card of your library. You may cast that card this turn. If you don't, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. Nice little ping, nice bit of card advantage. Then she has +1, adds 2 red mana, bit of ramp. -3, deal 4 damage to a creature. Quite cool, you know, bit of removal, remove a blocker for our commander so we can get in lethal. And then -7, you get an emblem with, whenever you cast a spell, this emblem deals 5 damage to target creature or player. If we get up to that, absolutely game ending. Brilliant. To go along this, here are a couple of very unique cards. Arc is garbage, but I had to put it in here. Chaos Harlequin is a 4 mana, how big is that? 2/4. That has pay a red, remove the top card of your library from the game. If that card is a land, Chaos Harlequin gets -4/-0 until end of turn. Otherwise, it gets +2/0 until end of turn. Absolute nonsense. You can just keep pumping red into it to remove the top card, and our commander just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Whirling Catapult is a 4 mana artifact. Pay 2, remove the top 2 cards of your library from the game. Whirling Catapult deals 1 damage to each creature with flying and each player. So, really quite good. Bit of reach, can kill everything in the air. A couple of tokens flying around. Well, they're not flying anymore. Really good. And it's got a wonderful picture of a giant on it. Finally, Arc Slugger. 5 mana 4/5. Pay a red and remove the top 10 cards of your library from the game. Arc Slugger deals 2 damage to target creature or player. Sadly, even though we're removing 10 cards, we only get 1+1/+1 counter. Depressing. But that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Moving on to number 3. Bag of Holding, which is a 1 mana artifact. Whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard. So it triggers our commander. Pay 2, tap it, draw a card and discard a card. Alright, cool. Puts a card into exile as well because we're discarding it, goes to exile. Pay 4. Tap, sacrifice Bag of Holding, return all cards exiled with Bag of Holding to their owner's hand. This is a really cool effect, and especially in red, the main way we're going to be drawing cards is through draw and discard, or discard and draw actually. Cathartic Reunion, a classic example of this. 2 mana for a sorcery is an additional cost to cast this spell, discard 2 cards, so they're going to go into exile with Bag of Holding to get back later, draw 3 cards. Faithless Looting, absolutely classic, banned in Modern. 1 red mana, sorcery, draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. Then it has Flashback for 3 mana. Remember, Flashback doesn't trigger our commander, but it's such a good card that it's worth putting into the deck. Oh, sorry, I got the Conspiracy Theorist there. This is a brand new card, 2 mana Human Shaman 2/2. Whenever Conspiracy Theory attacks, you may pay 1 and discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Whenever you discard 1 or more non-land cards, you may exile 1 of them from your graveyard. If you do, you may cast it this turn. So, again, works very, very similar to Bag of Holding, but it's on a body and you can cast it that turn. It's really, really cool. Brings on to number 2. Magmatic Channeler. 2 mana for a 1/3. As long as there are 4 or more instant or sorcery cards in your graveyard, it gets +3/+1. Tap to discard a card, so could trigger our Bag of Holding. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. You choose one of them. You may play that card this turn. So, excellent little card advantage engine. Works well with our discard synergies. And if we've got a bunch of instant sorceries, which, you know, we generally will be, because we want to really buff our commander up to make him absolutely, or her absolutely massive, it's going to be good. To go along with this, we've got a couple of other things that exile from the top of our library. Light Up the Stage. 3 mana for a sorcery, or we can spectacle it, so if our opponent has been dealt damage, we pay a single red. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until the end of next turn, you may play those cards. Prophetic Flame Speaker is a 3 mana 1/3 with double strike and trample. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. So sadly this works after combat, but the first strike damage will buff our commander by 1, and then the next one by 1 again, but the damage has already been dealt. Atali, Primal Storm, 6 mana. Whenever it attacks, exile the top card of each player's library. You may cast any number of spells from among those cards without paying their mana cost. And he's a 6/6. So all 3 of these are excellent card advantage engines, which is really cool in red. So playing around with that exile draw is quite cool. Another couple of cards here. Valakut Exploration, 3 mana for an enchantment with landfall. When it enters the battlefield under your control, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. At the beginning of your end step, if there are cards exiled with Valakut Exploration, put them into your owner's graveyard. Then it deals damage equals how many you put in there to each opponent. So this gets them into exile from our library and then puts them into the graveyard so we can use them later, maybe for some delve action. Jessica's Will, classic spell here, even though it's just brand new. 3 mana sorcery, choose one. If you control a commander, as you cast it, you may choose both. Add red for each card in target opponent's hand. If we want to be casting a lot of spells, we need lots of mana. And exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play them this turn. Again, great. Outpost Siege is the final one here. It's a 4 mana enchantment, which as it enters, you choose Khans or Dragons. Khans reads at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. Until end of turn, you may play that card. Dragons. Whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, Outpost Siege deals 1 damage to any target. The main thing we want is the Khan side, so we just keep exiling every single turn, keep going through our deck. Which brings us on to number 1. So our commander, hopefully at this point, is absolutely massive, but we need to kill our opponents. And while this card does have flashback, you know, I picked it when I got the rules wrong, it is still fantastic. Seize the Day is a 4 mana sorcery. Untap target creature. After this main phase, there is an additional combat phase followed by an additional main phase. So why is this so good? So with our commander attacking twice, we're going to exile 2 more cards, more advantage, and we're also going to be getting more 1/1 counters on our commander. The flashback cost, yes, it doesn't put a 1/1 counter on, but the fact that we can do this again is just phenomenal. It's really, really good. To go along with this, Fatal Frenzy is a 3 mana instant. Until end of turn, target creature you control gains trample and gets +X+0, where X is its power. Sacrifice it at the end of turn. Our commander can get up to be a 10/10, make it into a 20/10. Yes, it dies at end of turn, but with the trample, it's going to push through a ton of damage. Team of Battle Rage, very similar. 2 mana for an instant, target creature gains double strike until end of turn. Ferocious, that creature also gains trample until end of turn if it has power 4 or greater. So it's going to push through an absolute ton of damage. Really, really powerful effects. Finally, Chandra's Ignition is a great board wipe to use with this commander. 5 mana for sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. So we could potentially be killing our opponents with this. Especially if you give your commander Infect as well. That could be a really powerful play. And those are my top 5 cards for this brand new commander. I think it's a really cool card. You know, the card advantage aspect through attacking. We have seen some of the things to that in Boros, but this is mono red, so if you want to build it, go ahead. Got any other suggestions? I'd love to hear them, and thank you very much for watching, and bye.